Welcome to AndyTube. This is part of my restoration of a Singer Model 404, and it's part 14F. F as in finish, finalize. We're going to finish up my mini-series all about tension. And this last part, 14F, I'm going to show you how to set the stroke of the take-up spring, how far it travels, and that it must come to rest on the stop when the needle pierces the fabric. And I'm also going to show you how to adjust the tension on the take-up spring without changing the tension on your tension assembly or the tension discs, because we did a good job zeroing that out and getting our tension right where we want it, so we can adjust the tension on the take-up spring or check spring without affecting that. So to adjust the tension on the spring, or to adjust the stroke by moving the stop higher up or lower down, it only takes one screw to do each of those. This screw to adjust where the stop and the stroke ends, and our famous longest set screw on the machine right here to loosen that and pull the whole unit out, and adjust the tension on the take-up spring from the back side where the spring tail goes into what I call the gear on the tension stud. So I've got some pictures for you, and I've got a different clips of video that I hope can explain it all for you. So let's get started. This is about as close as I can get and see both the take-up spring and the needle. Let me try and turn that a little bit so you can see the stop. Maybe the stop is right here, right there. So as the needle's coming up, the spring is going to keep tension on the thread so that there won't be any slack on that thread. And then on the downward stroke of the needle, it holds that tension. You see the spring is like straight up, and there's tension on all of the thread between the tension discs and all the way down to the needle. But when that needle pierces into the fabric, that you see that check spring should come down and rest on the stop down here. So this is a close-up of what I'm describing about when the needle and the eye of the needle pierces the fabric. It's right there. The point goes in, and then the eye. And when that eye goes in is when the spring should rest on the stop. And then the next stroke, it starts putting tension on the thread again to hold it, not let it be slack. And then when the needle comes down and pierces the fabric, the spring should be resting on the stop. Okay, stroke is way off on this. and the spring's only coming down about halfway, and it's still holding tension. Not as much tension, but it's still holding the tension. And that's not good, because that's when the hook is going to want to come there and snatch up. See how there's slack now? There's no tension. There's a little loop now under the fabric, and the hook is going to grab that little loop, that slack loop, and hook it and go around on the rotary hook. And then as the stroke of the needle bar comes up, now we start getting tension on the thread again, and the take-up lever, just like you hand sewing and pulling the thread up like that, to take up the slack, the take-up lever will be doing that, and we want tension. And then the next stroke, go down. It should release the tension on the spring here, and it should be resting, but it's not. So we're going to have to do an adjustment there, and that adjustment is very easy to do. Let's go ahead and do another needle stroke here, and I'm going to position when my needle pierces the fabric and the eye of the needle with the thread going through it is in the fabric, so I can't see that thread going through the eye of the needle. I'm going to stop and hold the needle bar position right there, and then I'm going to go in and loosen the adjustment screw here just a little bit, so I can now move this let's see, am I in there? Yep, okay. I'm going to move this adjustment to the left so that that spring is resting on the stop now. Okay, and then I'm going to tighten up the adjustment screw, and then I'll do some more needle strokes and we'll see how it works. So right now, when my needle is piercing the fabric, the spring is resting on the stop right there. So let's see how we do now. We come up, we've got our tension, there we go, and then on the downward stroke of the needle, the spring's going down, 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 and as I'm piercing the fabric, it's resting on the stop. So that's adjusted now. It's very easy to do. And what's interesting to me is I had to move the thread guide almost to the limit of its adjustment. So that may mean that I have a little bit too much tension on the screw, on the spring. And you just want the tension necessary to keep this tension on the thread until it does go into. And I've got my tension set at about 3 here. So I thinking about the check spring and that it was used, I think it's fine. And I think it's adjusted now. Let me just keep I haven't put the motor back in, so I'm just kind of spinning the hand wheel by hand and just kind of sewing along here just for the heck of it. if I could get that over here and show you the stitch. It looks pretty good, the tension. So we'll be testing that. But what if this was not keeping tension on the needle thread as the needle was going down? It's supposed to keep tension all the way until the needle gets down here and pierces the fabric. I'll drop my foot down. So see, it has tension here, and then as it goes in to the fabric, it starts relieving the tension, and then it's no tension. See how loose that is? And that's exactly what you want. But what if on the upstroke it really wasn't putting tension all the way? And changing this is the tension on the disc, but the check spring or take-up spring has its own tension here. And I'll show you a picture, and then I'll describe how to adjust that if it's necessary to adjust. Okay? Okay, now if you felt that there was not enough tension on that take-up spring to keep the thread taut on the downward stroke, or if you felt that there was like too much tension and it was really snapping, and you can see it if it happens. I think you'll recognize it. This tension is pretty balanced already. But what if it wasn't? Well, you don't disassemble all this stuff, all the hard work and zeroing out and everything that you did. You would just turn it to 0 to relieve the tension, and lift the presser foot so that you could remove the thread. And when you remove the thread, you shouldn't ever really forcefully pull it back. Just cut the thread on the inward side of it and go on the opposite side and pull it on through. But what you would do then is come over here to the famous longest set screw on the machine, and you would loosen that, and then you would remove the whole unit. And watch the little take-up spring. You just remove the whole unit like that. And then you don't lose your settings that you made. You don't lose your tension settings and grams of tension and everything. But then you can come back here and check how it is. So when we put this on, and you want it to be 0, so there's no tension up here. And what it would normally be is the finger that goes into the machine, right? And you line this up, and it's going to be parallel. It's going to hang parallel. Remember that? And right there is the tail of the spring going in between that, what I call the gears. So if there was too much tension on that spring and it was snappy and didn't seem right, you just pull that spring towards you enough to get that tail of the spring out, and you would turn it counterclockwise into the next groove. Oh, let me get it over there. Like that. And then what that's going to do is, instead of hanging the loop straight down, it's going to be closer to the stop. And then when you put it on, there would be less tension, because it wouldn't be as far to go up on the hook here, up on the stop. So if it was not keeping slack for you, tension for you, and on the downward stroke of the needle, the thread was loose, it wasn't taut like it's supposed to be, you would pull that on that spring and get the tail out, and you would move it over a notch or two clockwise, which is going to move the spring up this way. And that's actually putting more tension, because now it's going to take more tension to move it all the way around and up to the stop. So let's I'm going to move mine back, because I felt pretty comfortable. There's my plus minus, there's my plus minus, there's my finger that goes into the machine, and I'm going to move mine back a couple notches where it was, because I felt it was a pretty good tension. But once you adjust it how you want, it's very easy. Just put it back in and get the little finger up in the top, up here, into the hole, and move the whole unit back into the machine. Did you hear me, machine? Move the whole unit back into the machine. There we go. And then tighten up your set screw onto the tension post to hold it. There we go. And then you have to bring that tail or loop up, and it's got to flex a little bit to go around the stop, and then it goes back on the stop right there. And then if you increased or decreased the tension, you would want to thread it back up and do some slow stitching. I usually just do it by hand to see now if does it keep tension until the needle goes into the fabric, or if it was so tight, is it now more reasonable, enough tension to hold the thread taut but not over taut. And it's very easy if you over adjusted it, or you say, you know what, I like my first adjustment better, then just loosen that set screw, set it to 0, turn the tension to 0, and just pull the whole thing out. And matter of fact, let's just do it. So we loosen the set screw, and we just gently pull the whole thing out, and just watch for that spring loop. And then you look at your plus minus, line it up with the thread guard, and then you come and look. See, and that's factory classic right there. You see that? Where that loop is hanging down parallel with these two pins, with the thread guard pin and the end of the tension stud. But if you did want to adjust it back or change it, again, you just pull that spring towards you enough that the tail comes out of those gears, and then you turn it clockwise or counterclockwise to change the tension. And that's just called setting the tension of the take-up spring or check spring. When you finish your adjustment, just set it back into the opening and make sure you've got your plus minus on top and the finger of the thread guard, and just push it all the way back, and then tighten back up the set screw, re-thread the needle for sewing, and check it out. Sometimes when you change the spring tension, I'm going to get this back up here and get it wrapped around and up on the rest. If this was over taut before, too much tension, it might be pulling that thread down so hard and the spring is sitting on the rest before the needle gets to. And then when you adjust it, it changes it. So when you adjust the tension, you may need to come back and readjust the stop so that the spring is resting on the stop as the needle pierces the fabric. And sometimes if you change the stop, you may have to go and adjust the tension. But look, it's just, one set screw here, remove the tension unit, pull out the spring so the tail's exposed, and move it left to right. One screw. On the stop for the spring to rest on, you loosen one screw here and you kind of move it up left or down right to move where that stop is, so that the spring is coming to rest on the stop just as the needle pierces the fabric. So, they're very, very easy adjustment. And by pulling that out and working with the back of the spring and the tail on the spring, you don't change your tension up here on the tension disc. You don't change the setting on that. That you work so diligently on to zero out. And a lot of people loosen that set screw and pull that out just to clean it and stuff, and clean the area. So easy to do, but it's important so that you form a good stitch and you don't skip stitches. So that is how you adjust the stroke, how far it travels before it comes to rest on the stop, and you adjust the tension of just how taut it keeps the thread on the way to the needle. And usually just enough tension on that thread to keep it taut. Not over taut, not too much tension. That concludes this part, and this part concludes the mini-series of All About Tension. My desire was to make it more clear for you and show you can do all these adjustments and cleaning and repairs, and it will improve the performance of your machine. So I hope that was worth your time, and I appreciate you tuning in to AndyTube, and I hope to see you again. Take care.